The purpose of the Global CFO Council is to provide an educational and networking forum for senior financial executives in order to share best practices, discuss current financial issues, and to learn about current topics related to the performance of their jobs.
Chris France is the regional president at Advance 2000. Super cool name, probably really advanced in 1999. I want to know what the origin of the company name is in a second. I think you got your undergraduate in computer science. You got an MBA from Binghamton University. Frequent author, frequent speaker. Chris, I think you were born in the great state of Ohio. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And
I'm a Buckeye.
I think you went to high school at Van Wert.
Yes. That was when I had hair.
I know, isn't that? I mean, it's kind of hard to tell the two of us apart. But
See,
I never had.
IT took all my hair. So there you go.
Well, you had a good. I never had a head of hair like that. That's glorious. Even had hair at, I think, the Ohio State University. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And although a longtime resident of Ohio, I think you now are living in South Kakalaka. I'm going to let, in just a second, I'm going to stop sharing here. I have no more pictures to share. Chris, I'm going to allow you to be the presenter and get this presentation back going. I'll finish. Chris, I think you maybe got 3 kids and a big outdoorsman. Is that correct?
Outdoorsman?
Yeah, I saw some stuff on the interwebs where you kind of like to get out there in the outdoors and or it was a Chris France. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I went to a survival camping weekend. Yes, I did do that.
Well, if the whole network crashes globally, we're all gonna find Chris, and he will help us survive. In the meantime, Chris, I'm looking forward to this conversation and speech about IT strategy best practices. It's always a good topic. Now, it seems like better than ever. I'm already seeing some questions pop in the chat box before you even get started. So I'm going to shut up. I'm going to mute myself and just listen and look forward to our break in about 10 slides and at the end, and I'll hit you with some questions.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you, Robert. That was an interesting introduction. So thank you. I won't belabor that, but I'll be talking a few points today. I'll talk a little bit about introducing Advanced 2000. And then I'm going to go into this is a priority order. I want to hit first security and data strategies. Then we'll get into business strategy, system strategy, IT strategy. We'll talk about EBITDAs, innovation dashboard, and questions and wrap up. And we're going to take a break, I think, after system strategy in here. So I'll try to go through. That's everything that Robert just said. I won't repeat it. So, but who is Advanced 2000? Well, we are a full service IT company. We've been in business over 30 years. We're privately held. We organically growing at about 30% per annum rate. I tell people we're kind of like a mini Amazon, somebody that you can actually get a hold of. You know, some of our services, IT risk assessment, high performance cloud computing, as well as telephony and support. Our coverage is North America. I tell people we're not chasing international business, but we do have North America clients that have international operations. So we do support their global operations. So we are 24/7 shop. We serve many industries. I call it the AEC industry: architectural, engineering, construction, accounting, law firms, education, local government, and healthcare. But to be honest, any business that has computers, they call us and we will help them. It's just that we've developed some expertise in the applications of these various industries. We do have a cloud platform. It's designed for efficiency. We own our own data centers, 2 of them in Western New York. It's a private cloud, and we don't run analytics on your data. So a lot of the major cloud providers do, at least the consumer versions of their products, whether it be, Microsoft or Google, whatever. Our culture is one, we call it the 3 T's: trust, teamwork, and transparency. We have service metrics, some of our key performance indicators. We've got about 37,000 end user reviews annually, and about a 4.5 out of 5 rating. And I will say that we actually are hard graders of ourselves. If we have to open up a ticket again because it wasn't fixed the first time, we give ourselves a 1 out of 5. So we're actually driving that rating down a little bit because we want to continue to get better and better. And our goal is to empower the business owners, giving you the ability to do more with less, protect your business by delivering more secure IT. And because IT is critical to everything we do nowadays.
Chris,
All right.
why is it
Yes.
called Advanced 2000?
It's no reason. Our founder founded this company 30 some years ago. I've been with the company about 11 years as a partner, and he just wanted to be at the top of the yellow pages because that's how people
Ah.
found things back then. And people thought, well, we've gone past the year 2000. No, we're not going to change it to Advanced 3000. We've got our brand. People know us as that, so that's what it is. Top of the yellow pages, which we don't even use anymore.
Roger that.
So the before we get into strategy, I've worked with a lot of CFOs. I appreciate you guys. I've worked for CFOs. I've consulted with CFOs. I've worked for CEOs. And the first thing I do, whether I'm an employee or a consultant walking into the firm, is I look at your security of data. I really don't care about your strategy if you get hacked, So that's what I do. So if you're down, you get hacked, you're vulnerable, you don't really want to talk about strategy. It's funny how things change. What I talked about, what I didn't embrace, maybe 5, 10 years ago, I'm starting to embrace now. Cyber insurance wasn't a big deal. It is now, particularly around ransomware. So if you don't have cyber insurance, I would look into it, get some quotes, because I've had several clients that have gotten ransomware, and they come to us. They weren't clients before; they're clients afterwards, and they say, "Help us." And they actually could use your cyber insurance to pay the ransomware if you don't have good backups. Maybe your suppliers get hacked. Hacks can put you out of business. So you implement the security best practices, which are. So these are some of the first things that you need to include in your technology strategy roadmap. Vulnerability scans. The security landscape is constantly changing. There's new threats coming out. These hackers, whether it's in Russia, China, in the United States, they hack people, they hack systems. There are tools out there that you can regularly scan. I can remember we used to do security scans maybe once a year, once every few years. We're doing them continuously now. It's just that the threats are so high. Email security, particularly if you're using some consumer grade emails, you've got to get some anti-spoofing, anti-spam, anti-phishing software. Advanced, we use Barracuda Premium, the Sentinel product. That just seems to work the best. We R&D a lot of different products, and that's the one we like. It protects a lot of our clients. Endpoint protections, we're using Sophos Intercept X. We have it on our firewall servers, etc. Intercept X is the anti-ransomware tool, best one that we found. Anti-phishing campaigns, this is basically sending fake emails to your staff so that you trick them into giving over their information rather than a hacker that can do damage. And they click on the bait and they go, we got you. Time to go to security training, that kind of thing. So at least you can, it's an educational type thing. Some firms, make a game out of it, have fun, and so forth. Replication and backups. If you do get hit with ransomware, the first thing you go for is your backups. And believe it or not, a lot of these ransomware attackers are getting very sophisticated. If your backups are online, they find them and they lock them up too. And so you can't get to your backups. And so it's good to keep your backups offline. They're online to back it up, but we also have tape backups. Now, this is old school. I mean, we did tape backups 30 years ago, and it's coming back in vogue. At Advance, we do have tape backups that for the clients that are in our cloud, our data centers, we do back them up to tape as well as disk. But we have just as many clients that do not have their business running out of our data centers. They're still on premise, and we recommend all these things to them. Regularly patching. It doesn't do any good to do these vulnerability scans if you're not patching continuously. 0 day, that can help you against 0 day attacks. 0 day is basically a vulnerability is found, it's published on the dark web, all the hackers get a hold of it, and you have 0 days to prepare for it. That's basically where it comes from. They start hacking before you even know there's a vulnerability. The good thing is a lot of times these scans or regular patching will pick up and fix these 0 days before they're able to be exploited. And multi-factor authentication, some of you may be using this. It's something that you know, like your ID and your password, and it's also something that you have, like your phone or a key fob of some sort. So you got to punch in a code that's always changing. So if you have these security things, so this is the first thing that I do is I look, and if you have these things, we're good. Now we can talk strategy. All right. Let's talk about first business models, because this will inform your strategies that I'll talk about. I ran into this. Somebody was commenting on this 2007 shareholder letter from Warren Buffett, and I thought it really appropriate to address this group. He's got 3 classifications of business models. Now he's looking at this as the kind of companies that he wants to buy or he wants to divest. And so he calls them gruesome, good, and great. And you can probably see your companies in this. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this, but some of the strategies that firms are using now is to go from a gruesome business model to a good business model, or from a good business model to a great business model. So what are just some of these things? Gruesome is you're capital dependent, highly capital dependent. So you can only grow by spending more money. A restaurant or fast food chain, whatever, factory, you got to spend more money on a lot of capital equipment to make more money. It's a difficult or a costly, unique selling proposition. It's generally tied to an individual or a superstar, and if that person leaves, your revenue suffering. It generally leads to low profits, and you're mostly recruiting from a local talent pool. A good company is getting away from capital dependency, allowing more growth without having to spend more money. Their unique selling proposition is probably still tied to a superstar or individuals. They're starting to see acceptable profit, and they're able to, draw off of a global talent pool. And now the great, he likes to see a moat around your business. Basically, you have a compelling business value and makes it very difficult to copy your business model. Non-capital dependency, short sales cycles, predictable and profitable client acquisition. You can see all these things. And the unique selling proposition is you're not tied to a very specific individual, and you can tap into a global talent pool through the internet or wherever. You probably know businesses and all of this, and you guys can figure out where you stand. All right. Now, business strategy. So this is the first thing, I can't tell you how many businesses that I've gone into and they don't have anything written down. It may be in the CEO's head, it may be in the principal's head, but it's not written down. That could be shared and communicated. I'll draw attention to this book. It was actually a Harvard Business Review article back in 2003. I still use this even today. The Harvard Business Review article was titled, "IT Doesn't Matter." And Nicholas Carr got a whole bunch of grief from all the technology and IT companies. And so his book is a little softer title. I think it's called "Does IT Matter?" It basically says, the studies of corporate IT spending consistently show that greater expenditures rarely translate into superior financial results. In fact, the opposite is usually true. His argument was, IT is a commodity now. Unless you're building, like maybe FedEx, in the first one to write package tracking software, that might be strategic. But if you can go out and buy it, everybody else can go out and buy it. So that doesn't necessarily give you a strategic advantage. It's what you do with technology. It's how you use it that gives you the strategic advantage. And he goes into a lot of things about how IT is driving to commodity type pricing. It's a commodity. It's basically how you use it. It's a good read. Typically what I like to see is some of these best practices as part of your strategy is an annual meeting or a retreat. You go off site, you meet for a few days. What is the business planning to do? First comes, the plan, then comes the implementation. Every group must determine their contribution to the strategic plan. You can see here, I've got a strategy map here, just real high level. There may be 4 categories: financial, customer, input, internal processes, and learning and growth. And you come up with initiatives. Now, some of these initiatives may or may not involve technology. You can look at them and say, all right, well, testimonials, That might be something that we need to do, but we've got the technology infrastructure to capture that. Automate hiring, you may need to get some kind of an automated hiring tool, whatever. So, you kind of just go through the company strategic goals, and everybody looks at how are they going to contribute. It's kind of, you make sure you're all rowing in the same direction, whether it's increased profitability, cost reductions, expansion, customer retention, and people talent. People are your most expensive and valuable assets. Many companies are using IT as a benefit, automate the screening, training, education, providing a flexible remote work environment. So you kind of get everything on the table, and then you realize, gosh, can I do all this in 1 year? Maybe this is our 5-year strategic plan or our 3-year strategic plan. And you figure out what the priorities are, and then you kind of go to the next step of planning, creating strategies. And like I said, I like to see these things all written down. It doesn't have to be real fancy. You don't have to hire a management consultant to do all these. Just write it down so you can share it across the team. Now, the system strategy, I want to delineate between a system strategy and an IT strategy, what I'm going to talk about next. So for the most part, your system strategy is not an IT function. It's more of a management consulting, create a mind map, a process diagram. It's a continuous improvement here. This is, I would say, heavy marketing and sales, or a chief operating officer, COO. It's what you want to accomplish from the strategic plan, not necessarily how. And I call this the company gold. Like I said, Nicholas Carr, you can go out and buy systems, you can go out and buy computers, you can buy applications, software as a service, cloud services, etc. But guess what? Those vendors are all selling to everybody else. Everybody's buying those. This is how you differentiate your company. This is your intellectual property that you want to keep secret. This is basically a complete systems map. I like to say 3 main categories of a business. Every business, every one of you, if you're looking to make profit and grow, do this: lead generation, lead conversion, and lead fulfillment. So lead generation is how to get total strangers that don't know anything about your products or services. How do they opt in? How do they at least, want to start learning about what you offer? And then once they start learning what you offer, they choose to opt in to your marketing, to your educational content, whatever. Lead conversion, this is when you actually get a sale. The customer likes what they see. They believe your promises. They see other customers that have achieved these results, and they're ready to buy. So now they buy, and now you have to deliver on what you promised, and you want to do this perfectly every time. And then, it just keeps repeating. You want to keep getting more leads, get more sales, lead fulfillment. Now, if you're a one-time, purchase, it's harder to do this. You got to have a really good system. If it's more of a recurring revenue model, which a lot of firms are trying to go, they're going from that, gruesome business model to a great or a good business model. They're trying to figure that out. Of course, you need customer retention. It doesn't do you any good to generate the leads, convert a sale, deliver a product if you end up losing the customer. They don't ever want to buy from you again. So there's, quick resolution, communication, accurate billing. Now, I would say everything on this list, you should be able to tie to something on your strategic plan. If not, then I would ask the question, why are you doing it? Maybe this is something that you can set aside. Key performance indicators, standard operating procedures. You can actually start putting key metrics on this. Well, how many leads did we get in this month? Out of the leads that we got, how many actually converted, bought something? What can we do to improve these things? Once all your systems work together, you can establish these things and just continue to make them better. And I'm going to show you some of the key performance indicators that I've used here at the end. And then multifunctional teams. This is an executive level process improvements, because you may eliminate departments. What happens if new technology comes out? And I'll talk a little bit about that. New technology comes out, new process, and you just you have the potential of wiping out a department of 20 people, just like that. If you have people from that department on this task force, guess what? They're not going to dig their own grave. They're going to create a process around them. So this is where you need to have executive level people and have a plan to figure out, well, these are 20 good people that have come to the company that have been trained. How can we redeploy them in other parts of this system? and retask them, not let them go. So that's kind of what your system strategy is like. And like I said, very few firms have this. It may be in like the CEO or the CFO's head. Next is the IT strategy. So this is kind of a stepwise refinement. You go from the business strategy, high level, you go to your system strategy, you see this, and now you got to actually start building it. This is where the IT strategy comes in. So you have a chief information officer. Generally, I've been a chief information officer. There's other chief information officers at Advanced 2000. We left our current employers because we saw kind of the future of cloud computing and what we're able to do. So rather than just building an IT infrastructure for one company, we're able to do it for hundreds, if not thousands. So ideally, the CIO, now they come up with different names: Chief Innovation Officer, Chief Information Security Officer, Chief Technology Officer. They're all kind of the same. But they should be part of this business and system strategy. They should know the IT, but they should also have a business background. They should know how the company makes money, how you generate leads, how you convert them, all that. And they will be one of the brainstorming part of the team. And I gotta admit, CIOs are people too, and they're just like other groups. If they come out with technology that will shrink the IT budget or departments, they may resist it. I've seen that with the onset of cloud computing, because IT departments shrink with cloud computing. And some CIOs embrace it, like myself, others will resist it. So I kind of have the major areas of IT strategy, call it applications, hardware, network, databases. And so this is kind of the big cost buckets that you generally will, I'll sit down with the CFO and I'll go through this. Your business runs on applications. I tell people, they say, what's the best application to use? Well, the best application is the one that people will use regularly, not necessarily best in breed, not what Gartner Group says. It could be on premise, it could be on the cloud. But and I'm also going to tell you another trend that's just starting to happen as far as integrating, not having to build your systems. With example, Zapier. I'll talk about this in a little bit. Hardware, if you have an application, it has to run on hardware somewhere. It is generally, we used to have to buy all the hardware, the servers, the desktops, switches, whatever, storage, and it's a huge capital expense. Refresh, R&D, what's the best, storage, area network should I buy now? Should I rent it? Should I buy it? What's the capital cost of the company? This is where the CFOs come in line. And so hardware is a big deal. And I would say this is probably the number one catalyst that caused people to look at other computing platforms, whether it be cloud computing or remote integration, is they don't want to spend $500,000 or $1 million on new hardware to upgrade. So that kind of where that comes in. Now the trick is to get ahead of that. Have a plan before your hardware starts to fail. Otherwise, you have to run out and buy something new and spend that $500K without thinking about it. Your network, you got your hardware, you got your applications. Now you need to connect people. Connect your applications, connect your locations. Not only in the same office, but wide area, maybe different cities. Your computer. People are working at home now because of the pandemic. Your network. You got your data network. You got your voice network. All of these things are coming into play. You got Internet of Things that are coming online. You've got your HVAC units now that need an IP address that are on your network. You've got the little Nest controller thermostats, just everything. Databases or data. Your business survives with data. It's the only thing you can't replace. That's why I talked about it first. Your security and your data, that's where hackers go after first. They go after your data, because I can't go down to Best Buy or I can't call up my IT company and say, hey, order me another 10 terabytes of data that have all my data on it. It's gone. If you lose your data, it's gone. And so you need to be able to have fast access to it. It needs to be protected. And then you got to decide, do I move my data or do I make it stationary? And the good thing about the cloud is that we're able to allow data to remain stationary more than moving it. Because every time you move data, you run the risk of opening up holes to hackers and letting them come in and get it. So these are all part of the parts and pieces that are used to implement your IT strategy. And so then you have to have projects, initiatives. So what I like to do is I map, so you've got the business high level boxes, you've got your system strategy, and so then I got it here. So then you can start grouping these boxes. Maybe one box might be an application, maybe a group of boxes may be an application. And then you create a project, you sign project managers, you get resources, and you start building this or acquiring it, and you test it and you get ready to execute it. And then once it looks good, you get the various groups to sign off on it and it's ready for production. You schedule a weekend to promote it to production. It goes live and now people are using it. You do the training and so forth. And that's where, for the most part, businesses are running 24/7 by 365. The project goes to production, and this is where everybody lives every day. Their systems, their processes, the help desk. When you're down, everybody knows it. This is where you run into performance bottlenecks. If you underestimated the usage of a particular application and it's getting hammered, you've got to react quickly. And then you've got the whole local remote access. This is where a lot of people were kind of caught with the pants down during the pandemic. They worked fine inside of the office, but when they went home, they weren't able to gain all their systems. So that was another part of the strategy. So one thing before we leave this strategy and ask some questions is I'm aware of another trend now, and I think that might be this next one. Let me see. Oh yeah, let me finish this one, and then we'll go to questions, Robert. The reverse IT strategy. So what this is all right, you're spending a lot of time internally so far, and this is where a good CIO or a consulting group will come in handy to say, look, can you guys look at what's out there? What are technologies and strategies that other firms are doing, my competitors, that I haven't thought of that maybe I should think of? And so I do like Gartner Group. I was a client for many years. It is a pricey service. When I was working for larger companies, we had a subscription. I would go to the symposiums. That's the most cost-effective way. It's at Walt Disney usually in October, but it shows me what the big boys are doing, and I'm able to see what the $100 million, billion-dollar companies are doing, knowing that technology or similar technology is available or will be available very soon to small and medium-sized businesses. And this is their top strategic trends for 2022. And hyper automation is one. This is where I was talking about. Now I'm starting to see, what started out as maybe a little technology for a small startup, maybe 5 people, an internet-based online company. This automation software has gotten so good that many companies are starting to use it. And Gartner's took note of this, and I'm starting to watch this as well, called hyper automation. Basically, you're able to string together a series of applications that are all over the internet, and you may not even need as much of your own on-premise or private cloud. So this is something that we're watching as well at Advanced 2000. Watch AI. It could be used for good or evil, but we can't ignore it. Privacy, a lot of firms, whenever I see like a gmail.com email or an AOL or something like that, I could tell that business is using consumer versions of the software, Google, Amazon, whatever. And guess what? There's no such thing as a free lunch. The reason you're getting free software is because they're analyzing all your data and what you do. Now, if you have the paid version, they have all kinds of privacy and things like that. And SOC 3, SSA 16, so you have more privacy protection, but all the free stuff, you're basically opening up everything. Cloud native platforms, many of us are running client server applications that were built for a Windows 10 operating system, but now we're starting to move away from that to maybe all web-based, and so forth. And so that's kind of what helps. An example, I'll just tell you one example I used. I'll call it a BIM cloud. I saw what cloud computing was possible, so I pitched that to the owners of an architecture firm, and I said, look, here's a better way to collaborate. Let's create a cloud where people can keep all of their designs in one place and not have to move them around. and it worked great. So that was something that, because something was out there that you may not have thought of, it informs your strategy. All right, I think we can take a break there, Robert, and ask some questions before we get into EBITDA.
All right. We've got a bunch. I'm going to hit you rapid fire.
Okay.
And some of these are just brief, so don't feel like you got to go into a bunch of detail.
All right.
You mentioned that replication, backup, either cloud or on-prem, but you didn't mention how frequent. What's a good frequency best practice for having that replication or backup information? And what is fast access? How do you define?
Good. Yeah, good question. So, in general, most of our clients, we do what we call snapshots at night. So basically, we take a picture of all your servers, and we've got software that does that very fast, and it's happening at 2 o'clock in the morning. So we do nightly backups. Now, for most firms, that's fine, and we can go back in time, 30 days, 60 days, 90, 12 months. It's however what the business wants. The problem is if you have 10 people that work for 8 hours a day and you lose your server, you lose your data, then you go back to the night before and you lost, 10 people, 8 hour day. So you lost 80 hours of work. Now, if you have 500 people, that gets to be a little bit different, dynamic, that you lost a day's worth of work that you have to go back. And we can snap more often, maybe we snap at lunchtime, maybe we snap every 2 hours, that kind of thing. So it really depends on your business and how quickly you want to get it back. But as far as restores with the modern, I'll call it enterprise level backup software, you basically can restore a file in seconds, directory in minutes. You call us up or you initiate a restore and it comes back. Backing up is the easy part. Restores are the hard part, because you got to make sure you have good, fast access to replace your data.
Chris, you seeing any federal, state, or international regulatory and compliance trends? Maybe a CMMI or a NIST or some European requirements coming. What are you sort of seeing regulatorily, if that's a word,
Yes.
out there on the tea leaves?
Yes, we see more of that. We do GDPR. Like I said, we've got some international clients, and if you're in Europe, regulations add a ton of cost to your infrastructure. We're talking, depending on what they are. We've had clients that want to buy $500 worth of services from us, but require $100,000 a year certification. We say, well, that's not going to work, unless you want to pay for the certification. So a lot of these big government they're usually for big firms, or they have to partner with a big firm to be able to handle some of these regulations. But we do get proposals that ask for audits. We basically at Advance, we certify to these levels, but we just don't pay these external auditors many times to come in and do that. And so we've actually had the client foot the bill to come in. If it was that important, they foot the auditor, the KPMG they send in, SAIC, they come in, they audit and do that. So yes, most of the small businesses don't have this regulatory, but the larger ones do, and we've run into this.
Chris, you mentioned that, say, staffing can impact IT strategy or system strategy if you had a huge change in the number of people that work in your organization. Questions around how is or could remote work or hybrid changes impact IT strategy or system strategy? How are you seeing this new remote world for some impacting system strategy or IT strategy?
Well, a big time. Well, that's why I kind of left my previous CIO job to do this back in 2010. And if you Google me, you'll find some articles that I wrote on cloud computing. I saw that this was kind of where things were going. And I've been doing remote work for the last, 12 years. And because I said, people need to be able to move around, whether it's at home, whether it's at the job site, client site, wherever, they need to be able to have all access to their systems like they were sitting in the office. Gone are the days where people will commute, an hour and a half in LA traffic to get to work and then back. So that's the kind of the message we've been preaching for that long. Have a strategy that will encompass both. So you don't have to go out and spend all this money to have two different strategies. And the clients that did this, they had no issue with the COVID pandemic. And the ones that didn't do this were scrambling. We got a lot of calls to be able to add this remote to our capabilities. And so, staffing, maybe you're a firm that has 10 offices nationwide. One office, the economy isn't doing so well. You're light on work, but if you can work remotely and another office is slammed, you don't have to hire people in that location. You can offload some of the work to other locations to better balance, keep your utilization up across the enterprise. So it's helped a lot in many ways.
Definition question. On this slide, it says cybersecurity mesh, and we had a question. What does that mean?
Cybersecurity mesh is basically, there's a couple ways of protecting your environment. It used to be, I have an office and I got a firewall and I'm going to just protect the perimeter. A mesh, I mean, like I said, you've got Nest devices, you've got Wi-Fi, hackers can come in through your thermostat now and hack stuff. So basically it's putting security on all the little devices that you have, desktops, laptops, phones, iPads, whatever. It's not relying on a hard perimeter to protect things. It's basically putting them on every device. And then matching it
We had a
together.
lot of questions in the chat box. I'm going to combine to one, and it has to do with data and data accuracy. Some systems not being that accurate. And so your thoughts on the importance of data accuracy as it pertains to big data analytics and these ideas of data being able to drive actionable information, but it kind of assumes that the data is accurate, and data is not always accurate. So what do you kind of help, like we all work at one company and you've worked at a bunch and support a bunch, like are we all alone? Am I the only place that works with like I got some yahoos entering data?
It's garbage in, garbage out, right? If you don't have good systems that clean your data, validate it, then it's not going to be worthless. I know the problem is about buying these quote unquote package systems or commercial systems. They're great, but most of the time out of the box, they're not that useful because there's a lot of optional fields and you don't standardize in the way you name them, and so you really got to kind of customize these things. And it goes back to the problem is nobody really wants to deal with computers and IT. Anything technology related, they throw it to the CIO, and most of the time these guys are computer science trained and IT trained. They don't know how to do lead generation. They don't know how to market, that kind of stuff. That's why you really need people at the cross-functional teams that know what kind of data is good, how to make sure that it's good, how it's protected and clean, and then you can do analytics on it.
Chris, we talked about how certain foreign nations are implementing requirements, federal, our own country or state, province we work in. What about large customers? Say the huge elephants in the room. Every country has them. Every industry has them. How are they dictating IT strategy down to their suppliers? How are you seeing that?
Yeah, they've got the money, and they're the ones, if you want to keep working with this, this owner, this client, then you have to get into their systems, especially as they do that systems process. It doesn't do them any good to automate all their systems, only to have somebody in their supply chain that's still manual, and it, frogs everything up. So they may dictate. And so that happens all the time. They'll either say, look, you need to do this, you need to make this investment, otherwise you can't do business with you. And at that point, it's a business decision. Sometimes firms like us, they want us to spend, $100,000 a year doing this, and we just don't see the businesses there. We go back and we say, look, we'll do this. We'd love to help you, but you need to pay this fee, not us. And if they do it, then great. If they won't do it, then we pass. So that's why, a regulation may come out that eats into your revenue, or puts you out of business. So that's why it's really important to kind of watch what's going on in your IT strategy and your system strategy, and the these trends that are happening.
Well, I asked 8 questions and 8 more came in the box that we haven't
Yeah,
gotten to
we
yet.
got to
But I'm going to
get on to the
pause.
next one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm going to pause, but save me some time at the end and I'm going to hit you rapid fire. There's some good questions in here.
I'm gonna kind of get through these then. And like I said, if we run out of time, you could always follow up with me afterwards and we can finish. I want to say EBITDA. So uh, valuation. So obviously, an IT leader needs to know the EBITDA. We don't want to spend $1,000 to make 100. If the IT leader doesn't know what's going on, I've known IT leaders that, let's just say, didn't last very long by not understanding this. And the we want to try to spend the least amount of money, and we can always spend more. You know, the IT strategy plays into buying a company. Merging two companies is very easy when you have your system documented and you're in the cloud. Or selling your company. Selling your company, you're more valuable if you have that systems diagram that I just showed you, and things are automated and you're not tied to an individual. You're more valuable. And so like I said, IT and software, everybody else can buy it. It's not strategic. Cloud and systems are winning out over on-premise. Business system strategy is your intellectual property that increases your EBITDA. Protect your IP. That's all I'm going to say about that. It's all related. Now, this innovation dashboard, I'm not going to go into it. I use this all the time with my CFO. It's a very simple spreadsheet, but it communicates what we need. It's got the annual IT spend forecast. Now, I'll just say I actually use Gardner Group and Forrester Group and others. When we all had our computers on premise, we were looking at 6 to 8% of net revenue for IT spend for small and medium-sized businesses. And I would say small and medium-sized businesses are probably under 100 million, under 1,000 people. Once we moved to the cloud, I saw 4 to 5% of net revenue for the services, which was good. And now I'm starting to look at remote systems that, conceivably could get down to the 1 to 2% of net revenue. And that's where you gotta, just scratch your head and go, geez, so I got to really look at this. So that's really all I did is I budget this out quarterly spending. I try to smooth out my cash flows, and whether it's people, Advanced 2000, people, client, I budget everything IT related, private cloud, software, hardware, telecom, and it comes up with quarterly totals. I have an annual expense target that I'm trying to hit that I work with the CFO. We generally don't, whatever the business forecasts, we usually take 90% of it because I don't believe forecasts, and we spend to 90% of forecasts, and that puts us at a range. Now, if we have all these initiatives and we end up being at 10%, then we got to say, whoa, what's going on? Can we push some of these off to next year, or is it a strategic decision to spend more money on IT for whatever reason? And I do the same thing here. I'm starting to play around with these remote systems that it's conceivable to actually get. You can see, going from almost $2 million a year to maybe a little over 500,000 a year. Typically CFOs will take note of that to say, look, if I can get the same capabilities or better for less money, I need to look at this. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm starting to look at. People, software, hardware, you just put it on the spreadsheet, and this is where I call this my innovation dashboard or spreadsheet, because this is where I can remember at times where my hardware expense was actually more than my people expense, and I'm like, ooh, we gotta do something. So then I looked at virtual servers, the virtualization technology, and I can remember my IT staff asking me if I was smoking something when I recommended some of these strategies because they were too new and unproven. And I go, yeah, but what if we can get them to work? Look what it'll do to our financials. And so we just started pushing this same thing with a BIM cloud. It's like, no, we don't work like that. Yeah, but what if we did? What if we could work like this? And we try it out and we get people to use it and they like it and it works. And so the next thing that I'm looking at is Zapier. I'm like, yeah, Zapier is made for small internet companies, but big companies are using them now. What if we tried that? So that's kind of what I look at. I play around with these numbers to see if there's any technologies out there that I can reduce. And this is just more of a detailed breakdown of that dashboard. And in this particular company, their annual revenue was 50 million. I wanted to hit 90% of that. 12 and a half is quarterly, 90% is 11.25. And then, so their annual budget that we're spending against is 45. And so, cloud computing got us, like I said, into the 4 range. There may be some new strategies that can get us even lower. Now, a CIO might not like that. They might not like their budgets going down, but I'm of the mindset, hey, you got to do what's best for a business. I pretend that I'm a shareholder in all my customers' business, and this is what I would want them to do. And so we're kind of wrapping up here. What actions to take next? Eliminate your vulnerabilities and protect your data. You need to create your business strategy or refine it if you have one. Same thing with your system strategy. Set up cross-functional teams. This is where I would spend some time if you don't have it. This is your intellectual property and your IT strategy. That's actually the nuts and bolts of how to get things done. And then the innovation dashboard just helps you plan out the projects and the cash flow and so forth. So my ask before 12:55, Robert, if you find this interesting, I can share this innovation dashboard with you. Just reach out to me. And I'm also going to offer our security assessment at a discounted rate to the CFOs, $1,500, which is dirt cheap. We actually have clients coming to us that are getting quotes 10 times that amount. And normally we've been charging $6,000 for this, but for up to 300 nodes, that's IP addresses. We'll do this vulnerability assessment, which we'll go through and we'll highlight all of your, vulnerabilities and a remediation plan. Whether we do it or your IT does it, at least have it, because we want our clients to be protected and safe. We see your data, we treat your data like our data. And so these are 2 offers. That's my email address, my phone number. You can schedule a consult with me. Just hit that URL, consult.christopherfrance.com, and we can chat. And with that, I will turn it over to more questions. I think
Chris, you're the only IT person I've ever heard say that you treat the company's money like you're a shareholder, or you think like you, or to say you can't spend $1,000 to make 100.
Yeah.
Wow. I know a lot of IT people that would definitely spend 1,000 to make 100.
Yes, I actually gave a proposal to my owners to lay me and the IT staff off because it was the right thing to do. And I tell them, I said, hey, look, I was looking for a job when I found this one, and so I do what's best for the company. And guess what? I'm always busy. I'm always working. So it's been working out.
Well, I'll hit you rapid fire with some questions here. You mentioned to build on Gartner Group as a tool to see what the big boys are doing. How do you keep track of latest trends and to compare what you're doing with other firms in the market? What are your thoughts on benchmarking, surveys, prior year? How do you what's some best practices or some ideas for folks?
Yeah, well, Gartner does have a lot of benchmarking in it. So you got to also say, well, is this benchmarking, does it pertain to me? Are they maybe a little bit different than me, bigger, smaller, whatever? So Gartner's definitely good. Once they started hitting, 30,000 plus a year and for subscription fees, I started going to their symposium. So you can get it's like once a year shot at all the trends, and it's like drinking water from a fire hose. You can get some benchmarkings. If you can get to be part of other mastermind groups, I was part of CIO roundtables. I know there are CFO roundtables that you can kind of benchmark. Even your group, you guys can probably, share benchmarking data if you wanted to go down that route. So, people with, a lot of times they'll share, as long as it's not proprietary and your competitors or whatever. But yeah, it's just, you gotta try to figure out how to get this. Like if you found out your competitors are spending 1.5% of their revenue on IT and you're spending 10, you might want to take note of that.
Chris, what's the supply chain like for hardware if we're out there looking for new equipment or software consulting? It seems like it's slow everywhere else. What's it like in the IT space?
It's almost stopped. We're having a heck of a time getting servers. Graphics cards seem to be constrained. It's, it used to take us, we used to get, new hard drives overnight. Now it's taken weeks to get them. So it's just that, all these lockdowns and, people are off work, whatever, people not coming to work. They don't want to be around people. It's just the supply chains, the truckers, just everything's affected. And we see that in IT. That's why I think more people are going to the cloud. We do have tremendous capacity in our cloud to bring people on. They don't have to go, even laptops. buying laptops is getting to be a problem. So yeah, it's a problem. That's why a lot of these applications, these remote applications, the Zapiers, other things are doing well. Um, and so it's just getting really hard to source this stuff.
Business case for blockchain technology outside of cryptocurrency. You seeing that for small or mid-sized firms? Anything that's a real business case?
We're watching it, but it goes into applications. Maybe I think for most firms, I don't recommend you getting your own developers and developing your blockchain applications. If it's strategic and you're the only one that's going to use it, maybe. But I think most of it is going to come in applications. You're going to have a contract. You're going to realize that you can, if you in your systems diagram, if you automated some of the contract flow and you found this service that's built on the Ethereum blockchain, you're going to end up using blockchain. So I think that's how most firms are going to be able to consume blockchain, is through applications that fit to your systems process.
Chris, we got some futurists on the call. Obviously, we got,
Lay it on me.
some questions around AR, VR, MR, so augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality. Any business cases for that emerging? And are we going to be having department meetings in the metaverse? Do I need an avatar?
Yeah, yes, I'm very familiar with this. In fact, we have clients that are using these tools now in the design and construction industry. They actually design a building in a computer, and then they can have a client go in and experience it in 3D with the headsets on and all that. And oh yeah, it's here. And it's just and that's what I would call what the big boys are doing. So the big boys are doing this AR, VR stuff, and eventually it's going to come down and it's going to be so easy for you to consume. And we're already doing video conferencing, look, and we're just going to see more of that. That's going to be in the AI stuff. Like I said, it could be used for good or evil. The deep fake. I don't know if you've ever seen any of that movies on YouTube. They can actually have videos. You can't believe your eyes anymore. So yeah, I mean, I think you watch it and decide. Just because something's new doesn't mean your company has to adopt it. Also doesn't mean you shouldn't adopt it. So keep focused on your strategy, keep focused on your systems, and see how you make money. And if it makes sense, then start playing around with
it. How are you seeing process automation, robotic process automation, and AI in business application? You seeing anything emerge, or best practices, or some great examples of using that in business?
Yes, we do have a manufacturing industry we support, and the Dassault, CATIA, SolidWorks, they have basically everybody designs in a computer now, 3D, whether it's their parts or whatever, and then they send that down to a CNC machine, computer numerically controlled machine. And so yeah, this is all starting to merge, but it goes back to your business case. If you have a manufacturing facility, you're building physical parts. Is there a way to improve that design? Is there a way to improve that manufacturer? Yes. Lean construction, there's applications, there's all kinds of STL files, 3D printers, all those things are being used with applications running in our cloud right now.
Chris, to build the thread on that business case, again, I got a specific question. I'll give you an example. So it's around, for the small and mid-size, either firm or division. I've noticed that you might have a new software or a new hardware investment that's needed. And often it's really hard to justify using the standard financial justification. If the company's under 20 million, or the division or project's under 20 million, sometimes you need it, but gosh, the math is just really hard to work out the level of investment necessary for what we'll call a big software or hardware purchase. How have you seen, how do you either financially justify it or add some words around security or criticalness to the business to get something justified? Your thoughts?
Well, I think that's why you need to have that innovation dashboard. So if you can convince the CFO and the CEO that you're within your annual pre-planned, pre-budgeted IT spending targets, whether it's 5% or 3%, whatever, then they really shouldn't care what you spend your money on. Now, if the system is so expensive, you can't fit it into your budget, into your spending targets, then you got to start getting, looking for some innovation. Case in point, a CFO, I was arguing with a CFO. He really wanted an ERP system run on Oracle, SQL database. And I'm like, sir, I get it, but it's going to blow your budgets. It's too expensive. The software is $1 million plus a year, plus the consultants, the DBAs needed to run it are very expensive. I said, you can run the same application with Microsoft SQL Server, for 1/100th of the cost. And there's a lot more, Microsoft SQL DBA labor out there for a lot less money. And he ended up not going with my recommendation. But that's really what I do. If I can't afford a piece of software, then I look for alternatives. Maybe a cheaper version of this, very similar software. And like I said, there's no perfect software. The best one is the one that you'll actually use. So that's what you got to do. You got to set your spending targets, and you got to stay within them, just like everybody else.
Chris, the security vulnerability assessment offer, is there any geographic limitations to that in the States or globally?
No. We'll do it
well,
any day.
Awesome. We have a bunch of questions left. I am going to send out the copy of this recording and a copy of Chris's presentation and Chris's contact information. So if anybody has any follow-up that I didn't get to or something that you think about over the next few minutes, you can hit Chris up. Chris, this was absolutely fantastic. What a great call to action here around simple things like cyber insurance. It's a good thing to have a conversation with your business insurance if you don't already have it. It's inexpensive, and it's great to have just as a what the heck to do if something really bad happens. If you got cyber insurance, they walk you through it.
Exactly.
Also, Chris's service here, what a great resource. Pen testing, training, assessments. What a great tool to be able to then bring to the board or CEO proactively that you are testing what you have in place. Great. The phishing campaigns, every time we bring that up, I just want to share a story. I got great people and amazing people, smart. And I had an employee at a place I worked fall for the phishing wire scam. And luckily we got the money back. It's a miracle. Thank you to my bank. If it can happen to me, it can happen to you. So don't think that only happens to dumb people. It happens to great, smart people that are just too busy to notice and make a mistake.
Right.
And then Chris, great job. Love it. I think it's great. It reminded me that, firms like yours at Advanced 2000, you got access to fractional CIOs. You don't have to be an expert. Your IT manager doesn't have to be an expert. Somebody like Chris that can walk along and be a force multiplier for the rest of your team. So thank you, Chris. Great job. Everybody have an awesome day. Goodbye.
Nice meeting you all. Take care.